Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women who are reshaping our world coming up. As we face a global epidemic of domestic violence, a novel approach in southern Italy offers survivors the opportunity to rebuild their lives by offering them training and accommodation. Also, with the advent of social media, our brains are receiving a constant stream of images. So how can we undergo a visual detox? Marine Tanguy has written a book on how to do that and joins me in the studio today. And a female theatre group in the Balkans stage an ancient Greek play which condemns women suffering in war while celebrating our capacity to resist. But first, and globally, almost 1 in 3 women have experienced physical and/or sexual violence at least once in their lives. According to the UN, the perpetrators are often current or former partners. But here's a story of hope. In the Campania region in southern Italy, it's hard for survivors of domestic abuse to rebuild their lives given the patriarchal culture of the region and the presence of the mafia. But one NGO is offering refuge, training and work opportunities, as our team on the ground report.
About 30 kilometres from Naples, the town of Castel di Principe, a stronghold of the Camorra, the Neapolitan mafia. Here, in this unremarkable street, a building that differs from the rest. This villa was confiscated from mafia clans and is today a place of hope.
Ciao Viola, buongiorno.
Daniela Dadio coordinates a unique sewing workshop. Here, a group of women, survivors of gender-based violence, are creating clothes.
These are women who've been taken in by the anti-violence refuge. They've made an incredible journey to remove themselves from violent relationships with their partners. And then they train to find a job.
A job to regain self-confidence, independence, and above all, financial autonomy. To be able to rebuild a life far from their violent partners.
Our last collection was called Geometries of Freedom, to illustrate how important and necessary it is to have a job in order to be economically autonomous and independent from whoever.
The initiative is part of a larger project supporting these women, run by EVA, a social cooperative that provides psychological support, legal assistance and a refuge house. Manuela left her violent partner 3 years ago.
I asked for help because I was scared for my children and for myself. And so I felt the need to protect them. I had no idea what would happen to me. It was difficult to leave all my things, my life, my routine.
Today, Manuela works in this professional kitchen, another work opportunity provided by the support network that allows her to continue to rebuild her life.
Working alongside other women who've had similar experiences to mine is of particular significance. What we do here is a goal in itself, for our personal fulfillment.
Since the end of the pandemic, about 30 women who suffered from domestic violence have regained their dignity through these professional reintegration programs.
Now, more than ever before, our brains are being bombarded with a constant stream of images, especially with the advent of social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. But what does that do to our minds, and how can we control the way it impacts our mental health and well-being in a positive sense? Marine Tanguy is the CEO and founder of the MT Art Agency, a talent agency based in London. But the reason she joins us today is because she's written a book entitled The Visual Detox, How to Consume Media Without Letting It Consume You. Marine, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Joy.
You work in the field of visual arts, and I imagine your daily life is full of, healthy and positive images. So why did you decide to write this book?
I think we're always thinking of the place of visual narrative and the arts within the visual world we live in. So You mentioned that we are bombarded by visuals, but it's actually, we are looking on average at 10,000 images a day. That's not just social media. As you walk around the streets, you're about to see 6,000 commercials daily. And the biggest problem is therefore, what kind of visuals do we see? And 99% of those visuals are commercial. Now, not to ban commerce, but commercial imageries are built on making us dissatisfied. The more dissatisfied, the more we're going to consume. Having an imbalance and being only consuming this content is only at a gender level going to further objectify women, going to ultimately work against climate change and a lot of the social progress we want to see. Our company was always thinking, how do we reinsert key visual narratives? How do we use artists ultimately to inspire us on an everyday basis, not just on a 1 to 2 visits a year into the museums, but literally on what we look at digitally, on where we walk on the streets. And that's a passion what we've done over the past 9 years. We've delivered 300 projects and we've integrated art in all those everyday contexts to counter that visual inflation of commercial imagery.
So what damage does it do to us, especially for young people and children?
Yes, I mean, first of all, as you can imagine, 10,000 is too many. So your brain is not able to compute that many images. You barely can process 10 images a second, 36,000 an hour. It's too much. You'll become overwhelmed. So that is literally described now as visual cognitive fatigue. Now, there's another thing is, from everything that we say today, we remember about 15% when we exchange verbally, but you remember 60% of what you see daily. And that very much influence the desires you're going to have, the wishes, who you want to be, your identity, and that will fuel ultimately your belief system. And not us being visually literate, not us comprehending the visual world we live in, is incredibly important, especially with the rise of AI, when 75% of images we're going to look at will be generated by AI by 2050.
You talk there about artificial intelligence, and the key thing is that becomes even more important for us to develop a skill set of how to be critical thinkers when it comes to digesting images. So how do we do that? How do we achieve that?
Yes, I mean, I think one thing to think about in terms of artificial intelligence is, first of all, the current AI generators are amplifying visual biases. So if you right now go on OpenAI or Midjourney, two of the main ones, you ask who is a CEO, your first 40 images are Richard Gere from Pretty Women in a glass building. You see absolutely no women. If you ask the same generators who is caring, you see no images of men. So it will amplify the visual narrative that we feed and the binary thinking that we're currently experiencing. The second thing is visual misinformation and visual manipulation is on the rise. We won't catch up on time with regulation. Nick Clegg has mentioned that maybe we could have watermarks, but in reality, it's not going to catch up fast enough. So we need to start thinking, despite this urge and instinct that if we see something, we believe this is true, that actually that might not be the truth. And you know that as a journalist, you have to question, and you have to learn how do you question this visually. There's various ways. You check the source, but you also start understanding what kind of softwares are being used for the images, the context of the image, what kind of visual narrative is trying to push on you, what is it trying to trigger you with. Those are many different ways in which you can start to build literally perspective with the images that you look at daily.
As we speak, Australia is set to implement a ban to accessing social media to young people aged 16 and below. Do you think that's the way to go forward?
Yes, I feel like social media-wise, totally. I think regulation within cities are also really important. In June, for the first time in Europe, Switzerland passed and ruled against visual pollution in Bern, suddenly started banning all the visual adverts that you had on all the streets. And I feel it's important to say that the reason I'm very attached to regulations is because when it comes to our cities, it is a civic space. And that's something that, therefore, we have a right of say whether we want to be bombarded in non-stop, especially when we know that there's a deep inequalities of who gets to see this imagery. 4 out of 5 billboards, on average, are in working class areas in low-income neighborhoods. So your inequality are also widen in who gets to see them. So that's very encouraging, that you can rule against visual pollution. I think social media regulations are also very encouraging. At large, is us waking up to the fact that once we need to be educated about visual literacy. And here's the good news. 65% of us are visual learners. So actually, I'm not asking something that is not innate. We have this in us. But the second is we need to express that we have visual rights and we have a civic say when it comes to our visual environment.
Marina, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And finally, an innovative take on an ancient Greek tragedy. Women in the Balkans have used the play Women of Troy to not so much highlight the devastation that war inflicts on women, but also on our capacity to both heal and resist.
For Kosovar's Ana Hoxha and Serbian Maja Mitic, an ancient Greek tragedy holds particular poignance. The two directors are bringing Euripides' work to the stage in both Serbia and Kosovo, with the focus on unending female endurance.
In our Women of Troy version, we are moving forward by also taking care of each other, by finding ways to save our children, to show that amidst conflict and war, amidst hatred, women are the ones that find ways to resist.
Both women keenly remember Kosovo's war of independence against Serbia a quarter of a century ago, and the bitter relationship between the two that's lasted ever since. The characters address each other in both Serbian and Albanian, with an English translation projected behind them. Soon enough, the different languages are subsumed by a single message, that pain is universal.
The relationship, the emotions that these actors are able to carry are more important than the language barriers. And this is something that happened with the show, you know. And it made people reflect. It makes you angry. Even our characters are angry.
Addressing that anger is something Mitic wants the play to accomplish, and not just in the Balkans.
Only through action of art we can make reconciliation, we can make these bridges of understanding what somebody did in our names.
25 years, though, and bellicose rhetoric between Serbia and Kosovo still prevails. The production has been staged at Belgrade's Centre for Cultural Decontamination. Perhaps it could be here, through art, that political discourse can also be detoxified.
And that's all for this edition, so until our next show, bye for now.